All right. Sidney, welcome. We again appreciate your having time to talk today. The first of what we hope will be several interviews about you, your life, what you've done, and of course many of the experiences that you might not have remembered to put down on paper that we're going to try to catalog a little bit. But let's back up. Okay, you and I have known each other since we were very, very small. Can you tell me the first time you remember meeting me? Do you remember where it was? Because I've got pictures. I got pictures with our great grandfather.
Right.
And I was probably 5.
Yeah.
Arlene was probably 2, 3 or so, maybe, or she was 2, and I was.
I have no recollection of when we first met at all.
Okay. It's always been like.
You were there.
Yeah, I was there.
You were there.
But only by a few months.
Right.
So the main thing is, we've been cousins, and I remember as a kid, we're a fairly strict Jewish family, and at least from Aunt Becky's standpoint, from Papa Dave and Nanny, my grandparents' standpoint. However, your family
Was a little different.
was a little different, correct. So Uncle Joe, Joseph Smith, your dad, remarried.
Right.
And of course, just for the benefit for anybody who might not know, the first wife and he divorced essentially.
Yeah.
But do you remember the year? Because you came along.
No,
54.
all I know is that my sister and I are 20 years apart
Okay.
in age. My sister Lois came from the first marriage. I came from the second.
Right.
I believe my parents may have married in like 1952, and I was born in 54.
So what was the story about Teddy?
Teddy
right?
was
Okay.
her real name was Evelyn,
Evelyn.
but Teddy was her nickname.
And
That's the first wife.
Right. And where did she live?
I believe she lived in Miami.
Okay. Where did they meet?
I think they were.
Yeah.
I think she was from maybe Nashville, possibly.
Okay.
For those questions you'd have to ask Lois.
Right, but the questions I asked, because I figured you must have met her sometime
I
during
did meet her, but not until
Yeah.
I was an adult.
Yeah.
Not until I was in my 20s did I finally meet her.
Did you ever hear from your sister as to how they met or where that romance came? Or
No, but like I said, I could certainly find that information out.
Okay,
because
we'll
Lois
talk. We'll address
is
it
still
later.
alive.
We'll address it later. Okay, not a problem. So of course, how about your own mother? Do you remember what the story was? How they met?
My mother and father?
Yes.
Yeah, they were school teachers. They met through like school conventions and teachers conventions and things like that, or teachers meetings. My father was an art teacher, my mother was an English teacher, and they were both teachers in the public school system. So I guess the teachers all get to schmooze with each other.
Do you know where she taught?
She taught at Sophie B. Wright High
Okay.
School, junior high school, on Napoleon Avenue.
So the thing is that your father wasn't just an art instructor at Forte. He was a profound influence on a number of artists who credit him.
My father was an all-around artist. I mean, he was not just a portrait artist. He was a sculptor. He was a potter. He was a jewelry maker.
He made carvings and cuttings,
Carvings, wood carvings. He was an all-around artist. He was the artist's artist. And he taught art for,
his whole life.
his whole life. In fact, he taught art at Forte High School from the day the school opened until he retired.
I know.
And prior to that, he was teaching at Warren Easton High School. And then at night, he taught it at Roblin.
And where was that? Do you know?
Somewhere downtown. I never went with him downtown, but he was always teaching art. At night, it was night school to adults, interested in art.
And in terms of when you came along, did you ever try to do the art? I knew you about the photography. We'll get into that. But
Right, I did.
But,
Yeah.
but did you ever do? What did you gravitate towards? Was it anything like sculpting or anything like painting or?
No, if I tried, I was more doodling. My artwork was more a comic book type of art, a comic strip type art. But I tried some portrait type stuff just to be like him, to see if I could. But photography was my gig, 100%.
What kind of camera did he have? Because I remember most of the family outings he had something that looked like, it wasn't a Hasselblad, but it was like a Nikon or something like that.
Rolleiflex and Mamiya Flex.
Mamiya
It was a double lens, twin lens camera. The negatives were square negatives, 2¼ inch negatives, and that's what I started out on.
Right.
I didn't start out on 35 millimeter. He didn't have a 35 millimeter camera.
So what millimeter size was that?
It's 120, 220, 2¼ inch negatives. I'm not sure what millimeter it would have been, but you know, they had two types of film. 120 was you had 12 exposures, and 220 you had 24 exposures. And you know, these days you got digital, and you just shoot. But in those days, every picture counted. You didn't know what you were doing if you were taking photos.
And you'd have to wind it, wouldn't you? Every time
wind it up to get to the next picture.
Yeah. So
crank. Yeah.
And you started doing photography at Forte, right? For the
I started doing photography. Really, yeah, I did photography for the newspaper. I think more than the yearbook. I think they had other students doing photography for the yearbook. But mine was strictly for the school newspaper.
Okay, the Silver and Blue.
Yeah.
And who was the editor at that time? Was it? Remember? No.
No, I don't remember.
I know I wasn't the editor, so.
Right.
But now, were you working there before, like before you graduated, like when you were a junior, or do you think you started earlier than that?
No, I think I was in there from 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. You know?
Okay, so
Ms. Vasterling, I believe, was the teacher.
Right.
So
10th grade for you would have been, I guess, because you were a year after me. You graduated in 72.
Right.
And my sister Arlene graduated 73. So you would have been probably working at the paper at the same time. I was the business manager or whatever I was doing, you know, selling ads and stuff, which I didn't really care for. I was editorial editor. I was also the person writing the humor column. But you know, you were doing some other things too. Tell me a little bit about some of the other activities you had at high school, because I don't remember all the things you did. I knew around that time the warehouse came up and you started taking pictures there too. But what other stuff were you doing at school? I'm trying to remember.
Well, I mean, I was doing lots of extracurricular activities while I was at school. I mean, other than what you're thinking about,
right.
I also worked for NOLA Express as a photographer, you know, the underground newspaper, NOLA Express.
And how old were you when you started there? 16, 17?
Teenager, yeah. I mean, my father died when I was 15. I picked up the cameras and started, you know, learning, you know, how to use them. I never really thought he was going to die. He went from being extremely healthy to being gone in 3 months. So I never really learned from him how to use the cameras. I had to teach myself, and I did it well.
Well, you know, there's no question about that. But you know, you touch on something really, you know, hard. And again, I do it lightly, but I understand, you know, that you know, losing a parent at any age is always difficult. I lost my dad, 25 years ago. I lost my mom 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So you know, it's never easy,
right.
No matter what age. But having to lose your dad when you were still a formative teenager,
right.
and then having to live, you know, in a one-parent household at that point, had to be trying and had to be, you know, difficult. After that, how was your mom? Was she affected greatly by it?
Of course, yeah. I mean, you know, they were a happy, you know, married couple. They weren't having any kind of issues with each other. I was an only child. When I was really young, I thought all parents were the same age as my parents. What I didn't realize is my parents were old enough to be my grandparents. And I should have been in your mother's generation, because your mother and I were first cousins, and I should have been born in that generation.
Well, you are considered part of that generation. You just were born a little bit later.
Yeah, about 20 years later. Irvin was 32 years older than I was, and he's my first cousin.
Right.
You know, your mom is my first cousin. Gloria was my first cousin. You know,
Sydney, it gets even crazier in some of the Orthodox Jewish families. They actually have grandchildren who are born a month before their son is born. Okay, so you know, you try to.
Well, I became an uncle at 2 years old when my sister, you know, had her first daughter when I was 2. So from the time I was 2, I was an uncle. I was Uncle Sidney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's well, you know, it has a way of working out. But I know you did touch on that with me. You mentioned that to me even when you were in your teens. You said, you know, look at your dad, and my dad wasn't necessarily athletic, but he was young and vigorous, and you know, he got around. And your dad, you know, was starting to feel the you know, the years.
Like I said, you know, until I started going to birthday parties as a kid, and seeing that other parents were in their 20s and 30s, and my parents were in their 50s and 60s, I thought everybody was raised the same. And then I started, no, people are not raised the same, not even close, you know. So.
Do you think it might have made a difference if you had a younger set of parents for you? I mean, in terms of what you ended up doing?
I think I had good parents. I think I was raised well. I think I had a good upbringing. You know, in fact, I don't think my parents, especially my mother, was equipped and ready to be raising a child of the 60s. You know, I mean, that was the Vietnam War, all the protests, the anti-war movement. You know, I don't think that. I don't think any parents were prepared for the 60s. Right, but at least if they were younger parents, they might have been a little bit more, had a little bit more.
Well, there's also the other side of the coin too. Sometimes your parents can be too connected, you know, and know exactly what's going on, and you know, maybe sometimes a little bit of some of the both of the not too connected and not too with it, along with the really attuned to what's going on would be probably helpful. But we get what we get, you know. We don't get a chance to pick our parents or our grandparents or what have you. So
pick your friends, not your family.
Yeah, right. So, but to get back, you know, in terms of your work as a photographer, you started working. You said with the newspaper. Besides the Silver and Blue, was they're defunct now, obviously. The Express or something you said was it?
No
Express.
Yeah.
So where were they located?
In the French Quarter. You know,
okay. So was it a precursor to like the Vieux-Carré Courier or?
Well, the Vieux-Carré Courier was not like an underground paper. That was just more like a Gambit or a Figaro.
Right. So this was a underground paper.
Yeah.
Do they pay you?
Oh, I don't know if they paid me much at all. If anything, it was just, you know, to get my work published, you know, my photos. I remember that I did write some articles for them as well. I remember somebody gave me an article a few years ago that they had saved over the years of something I had written for NOLA Express about Forche High School, and you know, and the kids at Forche.
So the formative years. Do you remember much about the earlier years where you went to grade school? Did you do any Jewish education? Did you go to JCC or anything?
Sure, I went to JCC. I mean, in fact, I spent first grade at New Orleans Hebrew Academy. When I was in the year after kindergarten, there was some talk of a teacher's strike. So my parents pulled me out of the public school system and put me in what was the first year of the New Orleans Hebrew Academy. And I went to first grade there. You
know what that strike was all about, right?
I don't remember.
It's called segregation.
Oh, yeah.
Desegregation.
Well, of course. Yeah. You're right. Absolutely correct. Now I do remember. And so I spent my first grade year at New Orleans Hebrew Academy, and then spent the rest of my grade school years at Allen School.
Right behind Forche off of Nashville. Yeah. And that wasn't far from your house, too. You could probably walk there if you lived.
I could walk to it, yeah. So then I spent 8th and 9th grade in École Classique because, once again, I spent 7th grade at McMain, and there was a lot of fights going on, and a lot of integration was happening, and it wasn't working out very well.
Yeah.
And I had no problem with it, but my parents felt that I'd be safer, I guess, in a private school. So they put me in École Classique for 8th and 9th grade. by 10th grade, I was ready to go back to public school.
Right.
I wasn't having this, uniforms and
Right.
and
I can well imagine.
short hair and all that stuff.
You went to Fort Che for 10th, 11th, and 12th. Graduated 72. Before we get on to the other stuff, I want to, I guess, try to get a couple things down on the record as far as it goes for pivotal moments in our lives that may or may not have occurred. September 16th, 1964.
Beatles.
Right.
City Park Stadium.
Were you there?
No. And you know why I wasn't there?
I know why I wasn't there. Maybe it's the same reason.
I wasn't there because my mother thought that the $5 ticket price to see the Beatles was too much.
Right.
$5.
But can I tell you why I wasn't there?
Why?
It was Yom Kippur.
Oh.
You didn't know that, I bet.
No.
Yeah. So there was no way I was going to be able to get my parents to not that they would drive. They would drive on Yom Kippur wherever I needed. They were not, where are you going to go? You're 10 years old? No, I don't think so, young man.
Yeah.
But
for me it was because the $5, at least that's what she said. The $5 ticket price was too high.
Yeah, I understand. Back then, S&S Productions was starting up with Irvin and my mom and my dad, and the top ticket prices were like $6.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of money for people back then. So yeah.
I remember going to see Simon and Garfunkel at the Loyola Fieldhouse.
Yeah.
It was an Irvin production.
Yeah, I was right there front row with my sister and my maid, Victoria.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they looked down there and they looked at this black woman in the sea of white and tried to figure out what that was all about. And of course, you were never in SAR, right?
No, I was in the other one,
Yeah.
Gamma.
Yeah.
And
You were in the
I was
Theta
the
Gamma
last-
Club, yeah.
I was the last pledge class of Gamma.
Theta
It
Gamma
just fell
Club.
apart after.
Well, I figured, yeah, but it wasn't you. Trust me, it was dying on the vine before that. But I'll tell you that the shows were excellent to be able to see. But again, I don't know whether or not did Irvin extend you opportunities to go to the shows, or my mom extended you to go to the shows?
At that time, I was like, 10 years old? Or
Well,
10
by
years
that time, when they started to do Simon and Garfunkel, etc., it might have been you were 11 or 12 or 13. I mean, they brought down.
No, I wasn't that old. I don't think I was that old. I remember going to I guess it was Loyola Fieldhouse with my father, and we had our seats, set aside for us, first couple of rows, and
well, because they brought some pretty good shows, I mean.
I don't think I was even 10 years old yet.
You had to be. Because you would have been 10 in 64, and they started doing like Peter, Paul, and Mary in 63, 64. They did Odetta around 65, and Simon and Garfunkel was around 66. So that's why I say we're a little bit,
Perhaps.
You got to remember when the Sounds of Silence came out.
Yeah.
So that was around 65, 66, and
Right.
I don't think we would have had them any earlier than that. I don't think, and they were, at that time, they actually turned down Robert Zimmerman to come down and perform before he became Bob Dylan.
Wow.
Yeah, so $1,500 was too much for them too. So, but I wonder if you've gone to many of the shows, because I know I always did
I don't
go.
remember going to any other shows besides Simon and Garfunkel, when of Irvin's. I know I did see Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Yeah.
I remember seeing them too.
Yeah.
But other than those two, I don't think I did.
Yeah. So I was wondering if any of that kind of spurred you to do the live thing. When did it sort of put a desire in your heart to see live performers, perform singing out live?
No, I just.
Because you ended up doing a lot of live performances.
All I know is I didn't want to shoot pictures of flowers and weddings and still buildings, and I wanted, the rock stars seemed a lot more fun and
So around the time that you were getting to be close to being a senior, I guess, maybe junior, when did you start doing the warehouse thing? When did they open the warehouse? Do you remember?
Well, they opened the warehouse in January of 1970.
Right.
But I wasn't in from the beginning. It was several months into the first year before I went to the promoters with work that I had taken.
So who did you actually talk to? The Fox or
I think of Bill Johnson.
Bill Johnson.
was Bill Johnson and Brian Glenn, but mainly Bill Johnson. And the three partners came down from Chicago. Bill Johnson was actually from New Orleans, but Brian Glenn and Don Fox were from Chicago. And Bill, promoted this idea to them of the warehouse in New Orleans, and they thought they were going to open a club up in the French Quarter, and they thought that this was going to be and then they see where Bill had found on Champatula Street by the river in the middle of the hood.
And I also think that the name of it originally was a warehouse rather than the warehouse.
Well, it still is, I guess, but I mean, everybody referred to it as the warehouse.
Right, yeah.
That might have been done for alphabetical reasons, maybe some first placement.
But, nobody knows what it's going to be necessarily referred to by the people too. So, but again, the question, I gets back to it. You said you came there with your work. So I guess I got to ask, what work would you show them if you hadn't been taking pictures of rock stars?
No, I wasn't there at their behest taking pictures. I was a paying customer.
Oh, so you were taking pictures in the crowd, and nobody bothered
Right.
to stop you from taking pictures with a camera.
In those days,
Yeah.
you had no issues with the cameras, unless the performer, like Bob Dylan.